Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming to the Commission for Gender Equality, the heritage site of the Women's Jail, a site of struggle for the past, and a monument of our history in South Africa. Thank you so much for being with us. We know that there are competing interests out there, and we feel honored that you have made time to come to us and that you recognize the issue of gender equality as central in your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have a report that we are presenting on the 2016 municipal elections. We just wanted to have a preliminary analysis of the balance of gender in the 8 metros of South Africa. As the Commission for Gender Equality, a full report will be written on all the municipalities and with analysis of manifestos and so on. This is not what we are presenting today. We just wanted to give you a heads up on how a comparative study of how the metros are doing in terms of gender representation and women in leadership as part of our mandate as the Commission for Gender Equality. So with those words, with the commissioners that are here, maybe I think we should introduce ourselves. Colleague, my name is Togom Pumlwana. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the Commission.
I'm Fanos Zarishozi. I'm a commissioner and the Chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality.
Namasonto Masibugo.
Well done. Commissioner.
She's a
commissioner here.
And she holds another head. She started an organization of albinism in South Africa. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Nondumiso Mapazi. I'm a commissioner.
Good morning, I'm Boiselo Bota, I'm a commissioner here.
CEO.
Morning, Keketumaya, I'm CEO for the commission.
Introduce yourselves there.
The study, the HOD.
The HOD, okay.
My name is. Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, the Program Director for the day. We're happy to see women behind the cameras.
Yeah.
It's always.
South Africa has changed, eh?
Yeah, taking the pictures as well. We're happy to see that as the Commission for Gender Equality. I know there are so many media houses that are here, and I greet you all, and you have taken, I would say, leave from the fees must fall to come and actually engage us on gender equality matters. In the morning to commissioners and the staff of the Commission for Gender Equality and South Africans as well. Since 1999, CGE initiated a program of monitoring the country's election to assess progress relating to gender equality in the representation and participation of women and men in South Africa's institutions of governance at national, provincial, and local government levels. In 2014, recently in 2016, the Commission conducted observation and assessment of the national and provincial country's municipal elections to assess the extent to which women's representation and participation in politics and political parties. As the Deputy Chairperson has indicated that this is, the report will be presenting to us is an interim report which form part and parcel of the overall assessment of the elections in size of municipalities which should be released later in the year or later in the financial year. The commissioners meeting that took place in August felt that it's important for South Africans to be actually given this information due to the interest that was generated during the election season around the 8 municipalities, around the 8 metros. The Commission's interest was and is still gender equality, to ensure that there's gender equality in these 8 metros, and we must also see to it that there's real representation of women in political structures of these councils. It should be noted that study after study suggests that companies and institutions who are diverse and inclusive seem to outperform those who are less so. Therefore, it's important for municipalities to make sure that their composition is diverse, represent people who are disabled, represent women, as well represent people from different racial groups. The principle of equality, as enshrined in Article 4, subsection 1 of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, as well as other existing commitments, principles, goals, and actions set out in the various regional, continental, international instruments on human and women's rights, including SADC Protocol on Gender and Development, promote gender equality. The gender equality principles is also enshrined in our Constitution. What is important is that not adhering to this principle of equality and adhering to the founding provisions of non-discrimination is also tantamount to breaching the Constitution itself. The Commission for Gender Equality, which is a chapter institution established in terms of Section 181 of the Constitution alongside other chapter institutions, was established to promote, strengthen democracy, and cultivate a culture of human rights in the country. And the Commission for Gender Equality has also as a duty to monitor implementation of international instruments, including implementation of domestic laws. CGE is tasked to monitor and evaluate policies and practices of state organs, state agencies, public bodies, the private sector in order to promote gender equality and the rights of women. CGE may make recommendations regarding protection and promotion of gender equality. CGE is tasked to evaluate any act of parliament, systems of personal or family law, customs or any customary practices, systems of indigenous law or any other law. CGE is further mandated to investigate gender-related complaints laid by members of the public, or we can do this if we see that there is gender violation. We can do this through our own initiative. Furthermore, CGE is mandated to develop, conduct, manage education and information programs to foster public understanding of matters pertaining to gender equality, as well as monitor implementation of international instruments. South Africa has ratified a range and a number of international and regional human rights instruments, which include the CEDAW, the Beijing Platform for Action, the African Charter on the Rights of Women, the African Charter on the Rights of and the Welfare of the Child, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, which is known as the Women's Protocol, Resolution 1325, the SADC Protocol on Gender and Development, and many other more. South Africa is then obligated to domesticate such frameworks and ensure them into the domestic laws, policies, and programs so that the beneficiaries can access them. Local government legislation provides for municipalities to promote local democracy, and if this is not done, has negative impact on women. For example, if women are not part and parcel of local municipalities, it contributes immensely on the impoverishment of society and families. It also exposes women to poverty because they're not going to get a chance to actually participate in the economic development of their own municipalities. It deepens patriarchal leadership styles that women are not capable to lead such institutions. It also reduces women to only voting creatures, thus flouting the founding values of the Constitution. It further projects women in a negative light as people who are not capable of doing anything. Therefore, it's important to ensure that women are included in these processes. In conclusion, Deputy Chair, I know there is the ANC has a 50-50 policy that applies the ZEPA approach. Our overall assessment in the previous reports is that where ANC loses power, the gender equality sometimes suffers. The CGE report on women in political parties indicates this, which was presented to Parliament last year. And the report indicates that there is a persistence and prevalence of masculine model of political life and elected government bodies, as well as poor representation of women in leadership positions of political parties. Men largely dominate, that's what I'm going to say. Men largely dominate the political arena and formulate the rules of the political game. Male domination is reflected in political party structures and leadership positions. The report reveals that there is underrepresentation of women in top positions of political parties. And then it can be concluded that men still occupy top positions in political parties, thus giving them an opportunity to exercise more authority at decision-making levels than women do. That's what the Commission for Gender Equality report mentioned, and the title of the report is From Rhetoric to Gender Equality, Women's Participation and Representation in South Africa 2014 Elections. It is important to note that the report does not reflect this report now that we're going to present today. It's only focusing on gender issues in the 8 metros. It does not address the interconnectedness of race, gender, disability, and other factors. It would be interesting to look, for example, how is the interplay among those particular categories. It would be interesting to look at the Johannesburg Metro as well, the Durban Metro as well, the Nelson Mandela Bay, the Tshwane Metro as well. How can we deal with this matter? To deal with this problem, and CGE has been now and again emphasizing this point, that we could not leave the issue of gender representation to political parties. This matter should be legislated. Government should enact a law that will domesticate the 50-50 principle as enshrined in the SADC protocol on gender and development, which South Africa has ratified. So that is very, very important. But again, we must also encourage communities, because the very same report From Rhetoric to Gender Reality, and our report as what we are going to present today, indicates that communities at a local level, they are not supposed to actually accept women, in more particular as ward councillors. Therefore, communities as well need to be educated around these issues. Municipalities have a responsibility to educate municipalities and communities to actually accept women as leaders. I think the media as well have a responsibility to do that. You will see in our report that there are very few women who are ward councillors. Why? Because the communities, they raise men as ward councillors. For us, that is very, very important. In closing, former President of Malawi, John Spanda, said, and I quote, "We must support the women who are getting into politics and are in leadership to stay in these positions." Close quote. Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, and the media houses are here, and the commissioners. Those were my opening remarks, Director.
Thank you, Deputy. And morning, colleagues, morning, commissioners, and CEO, and colleagues
Sorry, I
from the
just want
media.
to introduce Commissioner Nara, who has joined us. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thanks. As Chairperson said, this report and the analysis we did focuses only on the 8 metros. This is just the outline of what we are going to present. I'm going to skip on the CGE mandate because the Chairperson has already touched on that. Also, the Chair touched on some of the relevant national and international and regional frameworks that promote gender equality. I'll touch on that briefly, but we'll look at the findings and analysis. We break them up into overall gender representation to the councillors in general, and then we look at the ward councillors and the PR councillors, the breakdown between gender, sort of male versus female, and then we look at the office bearers, chief whips, speakers, mayors, and so on, and then we'll do the conclusions. The report is part of our study. The Chairperson also mentioned that we do this every time there's an election. We look at the parties in general, the manifestos, the lists of councillors, and how gender is prioritized. So this is part of that broader exercise, and a broader report will come at a later stage. And the objective of this study was to look at the gender balance in the 8 metros and to assess progress in terms of addressing gender equality or issues of gender inequality and the balance amongst political representatives. And we hope that this will will bring to the attention of policymakers the issues and the barriers to gender equality and women's participation in the metros, and to raise awareness amongst government leaders and political party leaders to address the same challenges. So this is basically part of the whole exercise that we are doing with the elections that took place this year. Brief mandate, the chairperson touched on that, so I'm not going to repeat that. The frameworks, these are some of the frameworks. As many of you know, South Africa is part of the regional institutions as well as global institutions, and there are all kinds of protocols, treaties and declarations around gender issues or promoting gender equality in South Africa signed up to that. And these are some of them. Basically we have our own domestic frameworks. The South African Constitution, it guarantees gender equality. There's a number of acts that promote gender equality. Some of them are here, some of them are not here. There's quite a lot of them. I'm not going to be able to list all of them. The local government legislation, the chairperson touched on that. There's the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill, the WEGI Bill, which is currently still being considered, which also calls for gender balance. We've got a national gender policy framework that's been around for many years that also provides principles and guidelines on how to achieve gender equality. So there's a lot of national legislation, the constitution, regional protocols and declarations, and international treaties and declarations. For instance, these are some of them. The SADC protocol, the chairperson touched on that. The protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa. The chairperson, I think, mentioned that. Also the the AU Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality. These are some of the principles, some of the declarations, regional and global, that the country signed up to. So the pressure that the Commission is putting on political parties and government, gender equality, is not just emanating from our own agenda. It's an agenda set through these international and national and regional protocols and declarations. So these are some of them. The study, the way we, as I said, we are focusing on the 8 metros. These are the 8 metros that we are looking at, and we got the information that we obtained. We got it directly from the metros themselves. As you can imagine, some of them have just been newly elected, and the information was pretty hard to come by. So we had to go directly to the offices of the mayors, the deputy mayors, the speakers, and officials to source the information. Some of it had not yet been placed online, so we couldn't just Google and go online and search the information, and it wasn't available in printed documents or anywhere. So we had to directly call them and phone them up and write emails and letters to source the information. We got some of it from the IEC, and some of the political parties themselves thankfully had put the information on their website, so we were able to access that information. We did in this report, as you will see, do some comparisons between 2016, the current election results, and what prevailed prior to that. So you'll see throughout the presentation when I refer to the 2011 period, I'm not actually talking about a specific moment in that period. I'm talking about the period, the 5-year period, especially prior to the 2016 elections, just before the elections, what the state of gender balance was. Because as you know, at the beginning of 2011, some of the mayors and the speakers who were there at the beginning of that period, some of them were changed over time. Some of the mayors were fired and replaced by new ones, and so on over the 5-year period. So we looked at the state that prevailed a year before the 2016 elections. That was more up to date. So when I refer to 2011 period, that's basically what I'm looking at least a year before the 2016 elections started. And another issue that I just need to remind you about, the calculations of the MMCs. I've seen that there's a practice of many metros when they put up the lists or information on their MMCs, they include the speaker and the chief whip. We didn't do that. We excluded the speakers and the chief whips from MMCs. We did the calculations for that separately. And then, yeah, the gender balance figures for chief whips and speakers were done separately. So I know that it's a practice. Some of the metros, they combine the two. We have a principle of separation of powers in South Africa, so you cannot include members of the legislature into the cabinet. So we separated them. And just a few constraints that we faced. I've touched on some of them. The information was hard to come by. Issues of accuracy, we depended a lot on the information we got from the metros, directly from them. We found some inconsistencies in the way information was compiled and submitted to us across the different metros. Maybe it reflected some of the socio-economic and resource profiles of the different metros, but the information was different, so we had to compile it, try to standardize it. And also the 2011 figures, where many metros removed the information related to the period prior to 2016. They deleted the list and so on and so on. So it was very difficult to get information relating to the 2011 period, especially for PR councillors. And also, one thing that is a constant pain for the CGE, the information that we get from government and other state institutions, it usually does not reflect the gender of the officials. So you would get a name called Lerato or Rapo, for instance, without knowing whether Lerato is a man or woman. So it's very difficult to tell some names, whether they are male or female. So that's the struggle we got when we sourced the information from the metros. Let's start with the more interesting part of the presentation now. This is the total balance of the councillors, gender balance. Now I'm going to draw your attention to the bottom line. Go right down to the bottom. Don't worry about all the figures. Go right down to the bottom. You'll see that out of the two lines, the bottom two lines, there's a total of 1,477 councillors in the 8 metros. This is a total number of councillors in the metros, both PR and ward combined, 1,477. Out of that, only 569 are female. That's 38%, 38.5% of them are female, which means a large number, 908 councillors are males. Out of the 1,477, 908 of them are male, or 61%. So you can see 61% of the councillors are male, 38.5 are female. Now, these are our findings, just to sum up, based on that table, as I said, 61% male, 61.5, and 38.5%. So you can see already the gender imbalance there glaring at you right from the beginning, the total number. There's a predominance of male councillors across the 8 metros. That one is pretty obvious. And that holds also for ward councillors, as we will see when we go ahead. The PR councillors, we also noted that there's a predominance of male councillors, which holds for 7 of the 8 metros. So what I'm saying here